Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining it. I'm Shri, VP of Operations at Collect Data, and I'll be hosting today's conversation. So, we're keeping this session a bit different than our typical webinar. This is meant to feel more like a short, practical conversation around something most agencies deal with every single month: reporting. Now, on the surface, reporting sounds pretty simple. You pull the data, build a dashboard, send it to the client. But in reality, that's not where most of the time goes. Most agencies we speak with spend hours, sometimes days, pulling data from different platforms, and even more, trying to explain what those numbers actually mean. And that's really where the gap is and what we want to talk about today. Because dashboards can show you what happened, but clients don't want just numbers. They want to understand why it happened, what it means, and what do you do next. So, to have this conversation, I'm joined by Denis Melnik. Dennis is the director of paid media at One Core Media here in Toronto. He's been working in digital marketing for over 15 years, managing multi channel campaigns and leading teams across Google, paid social, and programmatic. And what I really like about Dennis' perspective is that he's not just looking at performance from a reporting standpoint, but also from an operational and client communication standpoint. So, Dennis, before we get into reporting itself, can you give everyone a quick overview of One Core Media and what your role is there?
Definitely. Thanks for the intro. And um, I know there's a lot of people virtually out there. I just don't see everyone here. But yeah, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure. One Core Media is a vertical focus, industry focused performance agency. We play in multiple fields, from strategy development to media buying, media planning, media buying, creative production in-house, organic social production. SEO is our strength as well. And we put a nice bow tie with conversion rate optimization and automation services. So if clients come to us wanting to drive the growth in their business, we'd be happy to welcome them and support them. But of course, the reporting is a huge component because reporting is that touch point that cannot be neglected, should not be neglected, and it also a very particular thread that connects your day-to-day work, which you spend 100% of your time on focusing, and for the clients, your work to them could be only 20% of their day. So the weight and the value that you have assigned to your work when shipping products and services is much greater, and you obviously want to bring it up and surface all of that to a client, and then through reporting and the communication, you want to align and move forward towards winning the same championship and the same title. We use a lot of the sports narratives around here, so apologies if I get too far with all those
No,
sports.
but that's good,
Yeah.
good, Dennis. At least understanding like One Core Media is one organization that handles it all for the client, so
Yeah.
that's good to know. And
Yeah.
you mentioned a few things about reporting, the challenge about 20% and everything, but I want to start with a fundamental question. Like in an agency, who's the one who typically owns the reporting internally, and how much time do they actually spend doing this reporting?
Yeah, at an agency, again, at a typical agency, like where we have a production team, meaning execution, media buyers, media planners, a layer of leadership for the team, such as myself, the director of the department, and we have account management teams. So between the three people that are involved in the reporting, um, typically the big chunk of it sits with the production team. So the production team is closest to the channels, closest to the data, closest to the beat of everyday campaign buying, campaign optimizations. And my role and my job is to quarterback the activities and figure out what the narrative is so that when I get the data from operators, programmatic sites, Google sites, Meta sites, someone on the creative side feeds some insights in the data points. My job is to put it together into either a deck or document, and then review with account management. And account managers also provides, two touches to the recipe because they understand what the client's priorities are. Not that we don't understand it, but they have a lot more ongoing communication with the client, so they might shift a little bit of the structure of the report and maybe highlight a few more things that particularly important when we report for that period. And then, between account management team and myself, we're usually the ones that present it to the client and walk the client through. But if the client is very technical and requires that next granular layer of understanding of all the numbers, we might pull in the actual production team, the team that's involved with the day-to-day. But in a typically agency environment, you try not to do that. Otherwise, reporting calls and meetings become very expensive.
Yeah. And there's an interesting point you raised, Dennis, earlier when we were talking. So I get the idea of collecting the numbers, displaying the numbers as reports and everything. But I remember the last time we were having a conversation, the biggest pain point you mentioned is, yeah, there are tools who do that tools who can give us the reporting and everything, but that doesn't tell the story to the client. And that's why we got into an interesting discussion on why the dashboards or the reporting is just not enough for the client, why the numbers, yeah, you can put a pretty number into a slide, show it to the client, but it's probably not going to be enough for the client. And would love to know more why is that?
Well, because I think the real issue is reporting is treated it's treated as a deliverable, but it needs to be treated as more of a product. The product of the report should be the insights and the what do we do next, rather than a big data dump and ability to showcase your beautiful Excel skills or data visualization skills to a client. And every agency does it differently, but pretty much everyone struggles with data fragmentation. The platforms don't talk to each other in the same way, even though they might be calling the same events and same metrics the same thing. But when you try to stitch it together, that's where you get into the real challenges, because you don't want to be giving a client a story of how 5 different players on the team played their own individual game and celebrate the stats of every player without saying, did the team actually win? Because that's what the client really cares about. Like, when you put all of these things together, when you do the work for me, SEO side, you're doing creative production for me, you're doing strategy for me, you're doing media buying for me, all of it leads to the business outcome or the goals that we collectively put on paper at the start of our relationship. So you got to tell me how all of the players that you manage and coach and guide toward winning and delivering the results for me, how do all of them actually work? How do they all perform? How did they all perform last week, last month, last quarter? And what are we doing next? Which one needs to get better training? Which one needs to get some support? Which one needs to get more budget? Are we being, are we being outranked because of the budget? And so the real challenge is to not focus on the deliverable, which is a document or a deck of X amount of slides, but to focus and shift the focus around what does the client really need to understand, that, hey, we've done it and we achieved that certain result. And here's what the data suggests to us. Here's how we as professionals interpret the data. This is the signal we get. And then in layman terms, here's what you, dear client, need to understand about this particular thing. This is what it means, and this is what we're going to do about it. And at the end, it's more of the actions we're going to take. And we try to simplify on our side our actions as, this is what we're going to kill, this is what we're going to scale, and this is what we're going to kind of chill and sit on because there's just maybe not enough not enough data, not enough time has passed for us to make a concluding decision on it. And that framework of just the three simple actions behind the report, the data, the long paragraphs, that's what really just moves the needle and what the client can really understand and appreciate.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I love you going back to your sports analogy. I think you like the idea of having a team and then going with the team
Yeah.
and winning the team. That's a very interesting thing. Your five players are doing well, but did you actually win? Did the team actually win? I think that's a great observation there. So I get the idea that reporting is not enough. You have the data, you need to be able to explain it to the client. That's eventually what you're trying to say. You need to be able to show this is what you did, and that's what it means for you, and this is where we can go ahead. Is there a specific context for each and every client? What I mean by that is, are there always these five things that you want to show to each and every client, or does it differ from the kind of client you're working with, and how do you determine that?
Yeah, I believe it differs in the sense that I mean it doesn't differ in the sense of the typical maybe media buying funnel. If you're working with the lead gen client, then you're likely going to focus on the same steps, but obviously tailored to how that client converts from a click to a lead form to some form of an opportunity that's identified, and then the opportunity to a first meeting, and then the first meeting to a closed deal. You're obviously going to try to map your storyline into buckets and suggest that, hey, this activity helps with this. This activity helps with getting more people to see your brand. Maybe that's your top of funnel media play. You're gonna try to explain to a client that these three metrics that we're trying to improve contribute the most to the success of that layer. And that layer later down influences how many people that will then click, discover you, consider you. So we're going to shift down to these two metrics that we're trying to really be laser focused about. Then from that point, it's okay. Leads is obviously it's when people come to your forums or they interact with some ads on platforms. We want to make sure they fill out the forms. So we focus on the lead volume, cost per lead. And then we also talk about lead quality. So it's how many, at what cost, and how many of them are qualified. And so we bucket the conversations based on the funnel. And that way it's also, I think it's logical. It's also visually, easy to digest. And it kind of follows the pattern of a customer that we're trying to bring to a client. Because then we're putting the report and flipping it and saying, let's not talk about like what we did and things we control, but let's look at it of how we affected uh, the discovery process of your ICP, your ideal client profile. Where do we find them? How do we get you discovered? What caused that? How do we get them to pay attention? How do we get them to click? How do we get them to fill out the form? And then later down the line, if we are held accountable for driving the actual conversion into a closed deal, then we can talk about many other steps that are maybe controlled more on the client side, the automations, the emails, the follow-throughs, the amount of calls you've made, the appointments you've booked, how many appointments converted into no-shows, and how many appointments converted into signed deals. So we're trying to just structure it in a way that it's simple for our client to understand, and then it's also mapping back to how the actual customers would interact with digital platforms, digital media, content that's organic, content that's paid, content that's sent through an email, content that's an ad. And that way I think we get an alignment, and we also focus on talking about the metrics that we have control over versus metrics we don't have any control over.
Makes sense. So starting from the bottom up, when someone
Yeah.
comes in, lands on your website or whatever platform they're trying to get the people to, but going all the way to the full funnel, understanding, okay, you got the person on your website, you did get a conversion, they clicked the place that you want, what happened next, showing probably connecting to their CRM and even understanding
Yeah,
did it become a positive prospect, did it become a positive lead, and are you eventually going to make money out of it? So
exactly.
an interesting question here is, as an agency, you're doing probably in one campaign or one cycle, whatever that cycle is, you might be doing five different kinds of campaigns or five different kind of exercises for the client. How do you track which of them actually got the best conversion? Now you're telling the story to the client, and I get the idea that show the numbers, 100 people landed to your website, out of the 100, 10 clicked. The client might end up asking you, okay, I know 10 clicked on my website, but was it because of this campaign one that you did? Was it because of the campaign two? And how do you actually present that story to your client?
Yeah, that's the most, so typically that's the most challenging part, where the reporting and where the reporting is supposed to help, of pulling everything together, integrating the multiple data sources. But that's also um, one of the biggest challenges, overall, is to synchronize the storyline and provide the attribution perspective of, hey, there's so many touch points that you as a user have with digital platforms. You go from, one phone to a desktop to something else to another device, and we are trying to cause a response, that is single response, which is one form. Very rarely that somebody interacting with your ads on multiple platforms, they would fill out like same form 4 times. Like they would likely just pick a time device where it's most convenient, where maybe the creative was a hit, and then they're gonna decide to take action. So when we present the data, we obviously try to use, um, tags, analytics, ability to see through which click originated the path to conversion, what other assisting steps there were. So platforms like Funnel, so Funnel
Yeah.
helps, um, and other tools we've used for e-commerce clients. They're more the attribution tools, so they don't give you the narratives as much as, um, which of the ads performed better or worse, or which experiments perform better or worse. They're trying to put together a narrative of explaining the causation. So what caused what? So what actually should be attributed as a, given the credit for the conversion, for one conversion. Because when reports happen, as I said, like you talk about different players separately, and each of the players tries to also has a lot of ego. So think of the platforms as having their own ego. They all try to claim, that they were more important in causing the win. But when you add up all of their stats, it seems like the stats kind of exceed the total amount of points you've scored. And so if all of the platforms say, oh, I drove that lead, or no, I drove that lead, or no, this campaign actually was the most efficient, most effective, had the highest return, had the lowest cost per lead. When you add them all together, and if you were to report on all data sources separately, you will end up having an inflated number versus the back end, the single source of truth, being like Shopify or client CRM. And when they look in the CRM, they say, I only got 10 deals. You're reporting here 20 deals spread between 5 platforms. So that's the biggest issue, because now you're sitting and scratching your head, and my reporting wasn't incorrect. It's the ability to interpret the data, to discard the double counting, to also apply proper attribution models, and take that client on the path of these discussions. And so what I think serves in our favor at OneCore is majority of our clients are lead gen clients. So majority of the clients we do work for, they play in the lead gen space. And for the most of the services we promote and help them with, the path to conversion of inquiry is typically fairly short, meaning most of the conversions we drive are leads caused by click and not by
Yeah.
long paths of multiple touch points of views, then the click, then multiple clicks, bounces, and then they would click back again to fill out the form. So that helps because that shorter window and the closeness to a click gives us a bit more confidence in terms of the reporting, which is not the case when you may be promoting an expensive product that a person would want to buy. Then when you report performance by platform, your reports get very, very funky. Because every platform will start taking the credit for sale that they might have never driven. But in a lead gen space, I think we're a little bit more protected, and we're mainly in the B2C space.
Yeah. It's an interesting observation. I'm just thinking from a perspective of as simple as us doing this particular webinar. We had promotions, ads going on different channels, different places, and each of the channel is trying to claim that okay, someone did click on the ad, so that's where you got that registrant or attendee from. But then we went back to our platform. We're like, yeah, the channels or the campaign, the sources individually are saying 100 in each of them and probably 300 people, but we only have 100. So you're right, the retargeting campaign that's going on, one client using 5 different channels to promote the same thing, each of them is going to end up claiming that the target or the lead came from this channel. What I want to take next is I think during our initial conversation, we also spoke about not just internal reporting, but benchmarking yourself with the competitors. It is
Mm-hmm.
one of the key things. Creating a story, telling the story is great. You got 10 leads converted. Is that good enough? Is that what
Yeah.
the industry norm is? Or how do you help with that particular piece? Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting part. And where I wouldn't say we have a lot of strength in that part. We have a lot of strength of benchmarking against past clients that we've had in a similar industry. So that also helps being an industry focused agency where you would have 10 or so past clients working in this industry. You've had long-standing relationships with them. So you do get an experience, an understanding of typical sales cycles, conversion cycles, normal benchmarks for conversion steps and stages. So that helps establish those benchmarks when we onboard a new client in an industry where we've had past experience and success with. So that's benchmarking against our own sort of portfolio and experience. However, it's valuable nowadays to also look outside of your bubble of the number of clients represented in your bubble and look broader because the the benchmarks might shift due to some of the competitors enabling new processes. They might have introduced new ways of connecting to prospects. Let's say AI calling, maybe that pushed the conversion rates from a lead submitted to a lead connected. So the connection rate might have been pushed already. And if you only rely on your your benchmarks that you've established for yourself, then you might be misleading the client or you might be misleading your judgment. The benchmarks are just meant for you to be a way to, I think, at first establish the baseline of, hey, this is where we're striving to get to from a full sales cycle. Because again, it really depends. Like if we are just playing in the zone of clicks need to get you the leads, and then no matter what happens, it's not none of our responsibility. It's on you. Then of course, like we don't need to have too many of the benchmarks and research put behind it. Like a click to a lead, all the benchmarks of conversion, typical costs, you can engineer them backwards. You can reverse engineer. You can actually establish them based on the cost of the media. You can establish them based on that typical conversion rates on an effective optimized landing page or on an instant form, inside the platform. But if you start looking further down with all of the activities to nurture the lead, to convert them to the next step, this is where you're gonna need to start doing and performing some research. Not gonna lie, AI has been a huge help in that regard. We've trained our AI agents that are helping us with that, with the skills and some validation skills in order to surface some of those benchmarks from reputable sources, and then again, not to take them as like at face value, but to just introduce them into our planning as a, hey, here's what we observed as an average reported benchmark for this particular metric. Let's take it as an average. Let's maybe add a buffer up and down, and then let's establish the range within which we think we're going to need to be comfortable. And I think as someone who leads a client on that journey, we just need to disclose all of the information on the sources and how we establish those benchmarks, what they are, what they mean, how they're going to be used. And mainly how they're going to be used is to make the decisions and to help make decisions of at what point do we kill something that because it doesn't add up to the conversion journey, conversion path, and conversion metrics that we establish as norm, and what we need to scale if we are hitting on these benchmarks and we're within that normal range. But after the full cycle is completed, then we start to rely more on the reality versus the assumed, because the reality is the only way to continue optimize, to live within the reality, not in the space of what ifs and what others are doing and what the industry should be showing us, because every client is different, the processes are different, the flows are different, some salespeople are different, and obviously we're going to need to start adapting our benchmarks and forecasting and the reporting as well to that.
I agree, and there's a lot to unravel here, Dennis. In terms of yes, benchmark yourself, I think that's great. Try to understand what you're benchmarking against, but don't make that your truth, because it's a starting point, not necessarily a truth that you should always compare to. And I think you said an interesting point. Getting the leads is easy, but getting the right leads is difficult. And we have seen that happen with us as well, right? AI is the new buzzword. If we want leads, run a campaign with AI. We know we're going to get leads. We know we're going to get landings. We know we're going to get conversions. But what kind of conversions? We don't want someone looking for just AI. Come to a tool that doesn't support AI. Get the right kind of conversion. And benchmarking is great, but do you know what you're benchmarking against? Do you know what truth you're benchmarking against? Do it until a certain level, until a certain story is told, and then probably go back to your version. Are you getting the right leads, and see how you compare to yourself? We do have some, I know we're running short of time as well, but we do have some interesting questions that I want to ask from the audience. So, one question we have is, how are agencies adapting reporting now that the third party cookies and last click attributions are less reliable? Any insights that you want to share with the audience here?
Yeah, as I said, for lead gen clients, the level of adoption, I would say, is not as high as it is for ecom clients. When we manage ecom clients, we absolutely strive to have an insurance policy in the form of a third-party attribution tool. The third-party attribution tools do help us understand the different attribution scenarios and models that are aimed to be unbiased. So we've established partnerships with some of the software companies in that space. We've tested a few, but with the lead gen clients, I would say we primarily rely on still ability to do just UTM tags, embed parameters. We also do a lot of our paid efforts go to unique landing pages, the landing pages that have unique offers and unique phone numbers, so dynamic phone numbers, so that we could separate the source of the traffic from the output, on the other end. But even then, of course, it still becomes a little bit muddy with, let's say, the breakdown report between Google Organic and Google Paid. In a lot of the cases, when we do holistic approach and integrated approach between multiple services, we just try to put all the services together in the same bucket and claim the credits as a collective. Um, in instances where it's Google Organic or Google Paid, we obviously can try to do our best of separation between what caused that form fill out, what caused that client to come in. Was it a SEO work? Was it an effort of a SEO team, or was it an effort of a paid media team? We do it to the best of our abilities based on just common sort of best practices of how the traffic is separated, cleaned out, where the traffic is going, the tagging on the back end, and then obviously how quickly can the sales team on the client side reach out to the prospect and maybe do another further questions like, how did you hear about us? So quantitatively and qualitatively. So it's a mix of the two that helps us separate and provide the appropriate credit for the lead, for the click. But it is much more difficult with e-com. And for that we rely on independent suppliers and providers in order to assist us, because we've tried it ourselves before, and the reporting side looked very non-convincing because then it's Google, I drove 25 sales, Meta, I drove another 40 sales. The client's like, I only see 40 transactions. You just inflated it by like half, by 50%. So what is the truth and where is the truth? And with e-com and D2C in general, it's definitely a better play to have an insurance, and agencies will typically have a better retention rates if they package the reporting from the platforms is meant to drive direction, but the reporting with an independent third party tools that explain attribution, provide in-depth reporting and in-depth ability to change the attribution models and see how the model shifts the numbers. That is more of an insurance. That's more of this is where we make decisions about what to kill, scale, kill, and chill. This is what works, what doesn't, what needs a bit more time. But in-platform reports provided more granular metrics that could help tinker the creative, tinker the targeting, figure out which keywords are not working, figure out what campaigns need to be tweaked a little bit and where the budget could go. But then you're inevitably have to look at the two sides of it, because there's no way to map the two together. Maybe there's a way, but obviously more effort, more integrations, more data stacking together. But this is how we operate, basically separation of the two. But for lead gen, as I said, everything comes down to the CRM clarity, mapping. And so we work closely with the CRM teams on the client side for that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we work from the business standpoint, so more with the businesses who are actually consuming this report. And an interesting observation I think I have seen on that side, a client comes to us and says, I have this lead that is populated on my CRM, and we ran the ad on 5 different channels. I don't know where this lead came from. I'm like, yeah, there's a simple solution. The first time the person lands on your website, or first time you capture that lead on your CRM, just make sure you capture the UTM tag. At least that will tell you which attrition or which campaign it came from. And that's a small data change that you can do on your side, not being on the agency side, but being on the client side. That could also help agency give you better reports and better results. That we ran these 5 campaigns. Now let's look at your CRM, see how you got these leads. We can tie this back to the 5 campaigns and actually understand the source of it. I know we're running out of time. We have a few more questions. I'm going to take one last question, and I think it's an interesting question. I did have that question as well that I wanted to ask Denis. As people are adapting to AI, as there are new tools coming out, where do you see the reporting evolving, going next? And more specifically, what the question is being asked is, are there any AI tools that could help you streamline monthly reporting to the client?
Um, well, I think the AI is helping with the manual work of, well, I'll just take it. I'll answer it of how we've seen it helping us. Um, so it helps structure the data. It helps structure it in a way that we want it to be presented. It also helps doing the stitching between, this is my CRM report, structure that one first. This is my platform reporting. There's a common element that I want, and I'm asking the AI to look at the common element. Now, stitch the two common elements together and display what the CRM was saying versus what the platform was saying. Show me the variance of some sort, and it's able to minimize the amount of time that people involved with production of reports. So the production of the actual report, the time is minimized, but where it opens up the time is it opens up the time to a human to provide the narrative. And I think while you can automate the data movement, data packaging, data stitching, data cleanup, data validation part, you just have more time to then focus on what have we learned from all of this? What do the numbers show me? And what do I want to present to you as a client that I want you to take away from it? And yes, the AI has helped formulate some the so what's for us, but we never take it as, the AI wasn't the one doing the work. The AI doesn't have all the context. I mean, it might have all the context even today, but I believe that reporting side will in the future look like that chat. So the reporting side is hidden, and you as a user, or either you're an agency or a client, all you'll have is just a blank canvas in front of you, and you will just say, for this month, these are the 3 questions I want to answer. I want to particularly know how this vertical, the ads for this vertical works for me. What can I do about them? And the questions are stated in a way that you're after the action and you're after the actionable insight, and you're not even asking, give me how much I spent, give me how much leads I drove. You know all of that. And if you don't, like, you as the business owners know all of that. They look at their CRM data. We look at the actual dashboards that help us buy the media. We look at them every day too. So both of us know what's going on day to day. Both of us know what works, what doesn't. It's to understand, like, how and what do we do with it. And I think just like everything that AI brought, clarity, I think to me it's gonna look like, it's not gonna look like the sci-fi movies. That the beauty of the sci-fi movies where there's like 15 screens and the user is just like this powerful guy stands and he just like uses, like, he drags the data, he zooms in, he finds the answer here. And that's actually what people don't want. I think the reality is the opposite. You don't want to see any of that. You just want a clean question, clean answer. What is my action? Apply the action. Let's go back to seeing the results later. And I think that's where it will actually go back to not having too much of the data in front of you, but having all the data in the back, and then you can just extract the right stuff. That to me is a blank canvas, not the dashboards and the widgets and one number pop up here, the table, the pie chart, the graphs, like all of that is like the beauty of the sci-fi movies. But the reality, I think now it's just question, answer, action, automate the action, get somebody to take care of it, and then come back with the results.
And someone just commented, Minority Report isn't happening. And that's exactly what my thought was when you said the charts flying around, the different screens coming in. Isn't it happening? That has to be the future. But thanks a lot, Dennis. I think that's a great way to wrap this up. AI or not AI, wherever we head next, I think the biggest key takeaway is reporting isn't just going to be about numbers. It's about helping clients understand the performance and ultimately make better decisions. So no matter what numbers you throw at them, does this help them to make better decisions? Does this help them to actually make a decision for tomorrow? And if you can tell that story convincingly, then I think you have cracked it. So appreciate you taking out the time today and sharing your perspective. And I want to thank everyone who has also joined in to listen to this particular webinar. Yeah, thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Shri. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.